Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So I just read this book, Common Sense, The Investor's Guide to Equality, Opportunity, and Growth by Joel Greenblatt. I was really impressed about how much time Joel Greenblatt has spent thinking about how to overcome some of these systemic issues in our society, where people who don't have as much money and minorities have a really tough go of it. And so I just want to cover kind of the 5 areas that Joel Greenblatt talks about in this book and kind of suggests solutions for. So those 5 areas. The first one is education. Okay, I'll just give these kind of overview categories. Second one is ensuring that all workers can earn an adequate minimum wage. Third one is immigration policy in the U.S. Number 4 is bank regulation. Number 5 is Social Security / retirement. So I'll just give a few kind of sound bites from these different areas. So Greenblatt says, you don't have to be an investor to realize that the biggest payoff of all would come from ensuring that all of the youngest members of our society get a great education. We systematically send our poor and minority children to the worst schools. And this is really about, if you grow up in a poor neighborhood, usually the schools that you're forced to attend or that your kids are forced to attend tend to be some of the worst schools. They tend to be much worse than schools in higher income neighborhoods. So one solution that Joel Greenblatt came up with is a system of alternative certification. So if big companies like maybe Facebook, Google, Microsoft, if specific standards were set up by top employers trying to fill available jobs without requiring a traditional degree, it seems wholly reasonable that a supportive ecosystem of online resources, tutoring services, and targeted courses would soon develop to meet this new demand. For those not ready to take the specified exam or course due to missed opportunities or a poor education, a supportive ecosystem of prerequisite resources would also likely develop. Most important, no entrenched interests could stop this from happening. No consensus would be needed for such a system to work, only the willingness of employers to set clear standards. And all of this could be jump-started right now. So that's the first one, is for companies to start thinking outside the box a little bit, not necessarily requiring that college degree in order for prospective employees to get their foot in the door. That requiring that degree doesn't offer the same opportunities to everyone. The second one, expanding our existing earned income tax credit could provide tremendous benefit. A good paying job for everyone willing to work is also a universal principle that everyone would support if only we could afford it. From a long-term investor's standpoint, the reduction in childhood poverty and adult medical expenses would make the costs of this expansion less than free. So this is really about the government coming in, and where employees are only making, say, $8 an hour, the government comes in and subsidizes maybe an additional $7 per hour. So that employee is now earning $15. And Joel Greenblatt is saying, by the government footing that extra money to bring it up to $15 an hour, it's actually going to save money over the long run. So those are the first 2. The third one is immigration. I'll read a little excerpt from this. It may sound too good to be true, but according to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, on average, every highly educated immigrant between the ages of 25 and 64 who settles in the U.S. contributes the equivalent of $1 million to the rest of us right now. That's the current value today of all the taxes this new immigrant and their descendants will contribute to run our government, net of the cost of government services they will use. And according to researcher Madeline Zavadny, for every 100 skilled foreign-born workers allowed to work in the U.S., 183 additional jobs are created for American workers. Okay? The United States ranked second to last among developed countries in terms of welcoming skilled immigrants and entrepreneurs, according to a survey conducted by the Business Roundtable. So this immigration policy, particularly around skilled immigrants, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of growing the productivity of our country. Businesses, GDP, we're really holding ourselves back, even though we think by keeping these immigrants out, we're preserving U.S. jobs, but it's actually having the reverse effect. So that's immigration. Banks. If banks start out with 20 to 30% of their total assets provided by equity capital, making bad loans or bad decisions won't matter very much. Virtually all losses will be the problem of stockholders, either common or preferred. It won't be the government's problem, and losses won't fall on taxpayers or depositors. The risks will now fall almost exclusively just where they should, with equity holders. So, the idea here is that banks can't leverage so much that if a recession or a depression happens, the government has to bail them out to prevent sort of a cascading failure of our economic system. So that's Joel Greenblatt's recommendation, to require more equity capital for banks. And then finally, the last one, Social Security. So we have a real problem with Social Security in our country right now, in that within 15 years, we're going to have a shortage of money to pay out for Social Security. The way we're paying it out now is basically what people are putting in, what current workers in the U.S. are putting in, that's being paid out to retirees. Okay, so there's no buffer, there's no compounding, there's no investment of those dollars. So we're not growing the pie of Social Security. It's actually diminishing. And Joel points out what's happening in Australia. He says Australians are literally forced to save, or more accurately, their employers are forced to save on their behalf. Employers in Australia must contribute an amount equal to 9.5% of each employee's wages and salary to a superannuation fund chosen by the employee. And to this point, Joel Greenblatt goes through the exercise of, he was asked to teach like a 9th grade class about investing. And the example he provided, if you start investing at 19 and you invest $2,000 a year from age 19 to 26, by the time you retire at 65, you'll have almost $1 million. Okay, so that's 7 years of, maybe 8 years of contributing $2,000. Alternatively, if you start you start contributing to your retirement account at age 26. If you invest $2,000 a year from 26 all the way until you retire, 26 to 65, you're going to end up with less at a 10% annual rate of return than you would have if you had only invested from age 19 to 26. And it really points to the power of compounding, the power of time in growing that pie, your investment portfolio over time. And so it's a big issue. With our Social Security, we're not tapping in to the power of compounding right now because, youngsters aren't really investing in this country. They aren't contributing to retirement accounts. It's the exception rather than the norm for young people in this country to really be contributing to retirement accounts in a meaningful way. So we need to change that in this country, whether that's, forcing employers to set aside that money for people, maybe instead of paying it to Social Security, paying it into these superannuation funds, these retirement accounts, or maybe slowly shifting that over time. But we need to tap in to the power of compounding in terms of taking care of people by the time retirement age hits. And it's going to be especially hard for minorities and low-income individuals. They're especially hard hit by that reality of not having enough money come retirement age. So, it's just another issue to tackle in terms of inequality in our country. So those are the 5 things Joel Greenblatt brought up, and I thought they were really thoughtful solutions that he was proposing. I was very impressed with this book. Check it out if you haven't read it yet. And that's all I got, guys. I will see you in the next video.